just about sailing September 2019, although this one might well come out at the end of August. So if it does, sorry about that, but hopefully I'll be getting a couple, 2, possibly even 3 out in September. This episode is going to be mainly about putting in the combined thru-hull and Seacock, and I've gone for one of these composite ones. Now, the other thing that we'll cover actually is an update on how the varnishing's going, and as you've noticed, I've moved Serenity to a very rural location, and I did have a bit of wildlife problem, so we will cover that. So anyway, the most watched video that I've got out there is the one where I removed the Seacocks and thru-hulls from under the V-berth and then covered and glassed them over. So a lot of people, obviously, they're doing that work themselves and they're just going to look at this channel for that. So I need to give you an introduction to this channel to make sure that you understand what it is and what it is. This is kind of the non-disclaimer bit. So basically, this is not a series channel. It's not a DIY channel, though I happen to be doing a lot of DIY to my boat to get her voyage ready. If you've done something like this before, do comment. Don't worry if it's controversial, if you disagree with me completely. I do reply to all of the comments. If you're doing something like this yourself, do read all the comments, because there are people who watch this channel who know a lot more than I do about this stuff. And in particular, and this is going to be very controversial, I'm going to talk a little bit, not too much, but a little bit about why I chose the composite Seacocks. I'm going to actually tell you which underwater sealant I am using and why. I'm going to talk about whether you screw this bit in or that bit in, and I'm going to talk about whether or not you tighten it up, let it dry a bit, and then tighten it a little bit more. Now these things, you know, certain things you don't talk about. Politics, religion, which end of an egg you should open, and doing this stuff is part of that. So as I say, do comment, and I'd be very welcome to, you know, it'd be too late for me. I'm going to do this one first, because the smaller one is in a very tricky place to do, so I need to do that later. So I might cover that a little bit in a future video, but this is kind of the main thing. So we'll get onto that a little bit later. First of all, I want to have a look at the, my daughter Lucy is doing a lot of the varnish removal, starting with the bits that I've removed from the boat. So here's a couple of clips of her doing that work, and the first one I've had to blank out the voices because of legal reasons, which will be clear once you actually have a look at that. So have a look at this, and then we'll see just how much work she's actually done, which I'm very, very pleased with, I have to say. So here we go, just checking out that Lucy is getting on with it, because she now has officially her own keys to the shed and the boat, and that's looking really good actually.
This is side number 2.
Oh, that's side number 2.
In true Blue Peter style. Here's one I did earlier.
Oh wow. That looks fabulous.
Yeah, be careful of that. I didn't turn it off that long ago.
So be careful. That is obviously, it's just standard. See, health and safety goes out the window, doesn't it, when she starts doing these things? That looks smashing. That looks absolutely brilliant. Lucy has actually very nearly finished all the bits I've taken off, so wonderful, 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 wonderful. So right, you might remember from a few episodes ago that I'd kind of lined up the work that needed to be done, and these are some of the bits that I've taken out the boat. There are a couple of doors, and she stripped all of this. It needs a little bit of fine going over with the sandpaper and then hoovering, and then she's going to start the varnishing. She's actually shortly going to start to do the inside varnish. So very, very pleased with that. This is really coming on a pace. It's not a job that I enjoy, but she's proved to be very, very good at it. So anyway, we are going to get onto the Seacock shortly, but obviously one of the things you probably noticed about the videos is there's lots of bird noise, and birds can be a problem with boats. So here's a quick view of a little bit of a problem that I had, and it's not the one that you might think of. Now, as I said before, it's great that Serenity is only 100 yards away from where I am. But if you have nightmare about Hitchcock's birds, and there are more in that tree up there, these things must. They are starlings, and they're getting more and more each day. So I'm wondering, I'll capture it if I can, but I'm wondering if we're going to get one of those So anyway, what can I say? Birds are pretty good negotiators, so all that cost me was a new pair of glasses, which I probably needed anyway, and some extra seeds in the fat balls on the bird table, and pieces now broken out, although they're behind me, aren't they? Are they behind me? Oh my goodness me. So there we go, that problem's obviously not as sorted out as I hoped it was, but so far peace prevails. Anyway, let's get on with this. Now, I'm a very cautious person when it comes to doing things on my boat, and I do like to test things out. And there's nothing worse, and I did this when there's nothing worse than actually having to drill a hole through a perfectly good hull. And I did this when I put the exhaust in for the heater, but that was above the waterline. So obviously for doing this, it's under the waterline, and I need to make sure that I've got it in on the other side of the boat. By the way, it's not on this side. I need to make sure I'm putting it in exactly the right spot. So what I'm going to do is start off with trying to actually draw out where the bulkheads are for the toilet on the outside the hull, so I can kind of figure out exactly where this is going to go. So let's follow this and see how it goes, because obviously I don't know yet. I haven't actually done it. So very roughly, that's where that ledge is. I'll show an insert because that's not desperately clear, and I need to turn it up. I just want to figure out very roughly about 14, 15, about 14. So from here, this ledge to the waterline is very roughly 14 centimetres, and looking from this side, I want the outlet to go about there, and the inlet will come down there somewhere, and I'll measure that a bit later. Let's focus on this one first. Does that make sense? Hope so. So I've just figured out where the bulkheads are on the outside very roughly, and I want to mark where the waterline is. So 14 is about there. Right, so the idea is that this through hull, as I suspected, will fit about there, sort of midway between the two, so it's just under the water. Right, so this is it. I have my drill. I'm going to go inside. I've marked up 7.5 from there, 18 from there, and I think that's where the hole should be. Obviously, well, I think it's obviously, I need to get it, where it is inside is more important. When I actually do the bigger hole, I'm going to drill it from the outside, but let's go and do it, and you can watch there and see. It doesn't really, to be quite, well, anyway, we'll see, won't we? So here we go. No turning back. Hopefully the light isn't too bad in here. And oh, I hate doing this. I'm doing it left-handed. Could go wrong. You'll actually see before I do whether this is right or wrong. Right, I'll leave that sticking out and go and see what the damage is. Fingers crossed. You already know, this is just so unfair. Well, as we can see, that's the drill. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm about a tiny little bit off, but that's not too bad. So it's roughly in the right place. That'll do. Happy with that. Right, so this is the backing plate, which is going to go down there. I'm going to epoxy that in. So all this is it's a square piece of 10mm marine ply that I've cut out. I've coated it in epoxy. On the reverse side I put peel ply on that, so that's a nice epoxy friendly surface, and on the other side I've just washed off the amine blush and given it a rub down with 120, which I think the sealant prefers, rather than the sort of equivalent of an 80 grit. Very important stage that a lot of people seem to miss out, and I'm not sure why, is to wet the area out and then let it go tacky. This is vital for getting the initial sort of chemical bond sorted out. I've rubbed this area down very thoroughly, cleaned it, hoovered it. So I should just do, sure it's the right size. Just do the same on the actual block of wood. Don't actually need too much, to be quite honest, but and a ridiculously thick coating of thickened epoxy. I've used 406 on this. Thread that. Easiest part of the job is to thread this through the hole. There we go. And I can feel that squidging out. Nicely. I'm just going to run my finger around here to make a nice fillet around the edges. Right, so here we go. I've drilled a small hole. Now what I need to do is to use one of these cutters to the right side so I can drill this out. Now the set that I've got, this size is just a tiny little bit too small, and the next size up is way too large. I don't think I've lost one, there just seems to be a gap, so I'm going to do it with a smaller one and then possibly ream it out a little bit. Right, here we go. Right, and one of the reasons I'm doing this from the outside is because when I do the second one, the more difficult one, I don't have access from the inside, so I want to see how well it goes doing this from the outside. I also want to check that I've got enough depth on this cutter to get through both the hull and the plywood, and I'm beginning to doubt that I have, so we shall see. Right, let's just do this, shall we? Let's just do this after putting safety equipment on. Right, so this is heating up quite a bit, and I don't want to do it. So this has been a useful exercise, because what I'm going to do, I am going to finish this off from the inside, and then when I put the other plate on, I'm going to actually do the 2 big holes first. No reason I couldn't have done that in this case. It just seemed to me to be a lot easier to do it this way, but then obviously I've got quite a thick thing to go through. So I'm going to do it from the other side, see if I can meet in the middle a bit, because I think rubbing around here it's actually getting very hot, and that's really hot, and I don't like getting fiberglass too hot. Right, so there we go. I now have a hole. So there we go, I now have a hole. Now in retrospect, I didn't think it was going to be that thick. I should have made the calculation a little bit more. So obviously what was happening is this was getting to the point where there's something in the way inside, so it was getting to there, and it was simply burning away and making heat rather than actually cutting through. So the lesson for the next one is most definitely I'll do it more or less the same way, except I will do the big hole in the wood before I put it through. So this is part of the reason why I did the big hole first. I think that's going to be too small. Yeah, that's just a little bit too small, so I need to ream that out a little bit because that's not going to fit in there. Right, there we go. That fits in there nicely. I'm happy with that fit. It's not too tight, definitely not too loose. And I'm just going to clean this up. I won't show this bit. I'm just going to clean this up, and I'm going to do a couple of coats, 2 or 3, perhaps even 4 or 5 coats of epoxy around this bit to kind of waterproof it. Well, we're nearly there. This is kind of the final mock-up. I've mocked up where the pipework will go, and I really wanted to just see where the handle should go, and I've tested this out, and the most convenient place to put it is so that it goes kind of across there. If I put it on the other side, there's just not enough room anywhere else. I could just about do it if it was down by the side, but that is actually quite convenient. So right, that's the last mock-up. Okay, so it's all systems go now. What I'm going to do is do another dry fit, hold this on the outside and mark a line as I turn this in, so I know that the handle's going to be the right place. What I've done, because I'm not sure how thick the sealant is going to be, is I'm just going to put this little washer on there just as a guide. I'm guessing that's thicker than the sealant is going to be, but it's not too critical exactly where this handle ends up. But I don't want to turn it around and then find I can't quite. Anyway, so we'll do that. Mark a line between here and there. I have already cut the end off of this, which meant cutting about that much off, because in order for this to be compliant with all the standards, so you can get a large grown man or elephant to stand on it, it won't break, you're supposed to have a minimum of 5 threads going into this. I've actually got about 12 going into this, so that's all been done, that's all been sorted out. But before we go into that, I said I'd talk about why I chose one of these composite through hulls. Well, a few reasons. One, I think they're exactly just as good as the brass bronze ones. There's less hassle with needing to check dezinkification and so on. It's a long way to run a lead from where the nearest earth point is, so I'm not going to have galvanic corrosion things with this. It's also slightly shorter than the alternatives, which I need in the limited space I've got. I like the fact that it's one single built unit, so I don't have to do a thru-hull skin fitting as we call them in the UK, and a Seacock. It's kind of all in one, so there's less to go wrong. There are people who make mistakes about combining the wrong sort of threads with the wrong sort of Seacock and so on. I won't make that mistake with this because it's all in one. So I said not huge justification, but and they're quite expensive. Got a good reputation, very strong. Anyway, I'm not going to justify it, but that's kind of why I made that decision. Interestingly, there's some work at the back I need to do with thru-hulls, and I don't think I've got the room for this, so I might use the more traditional ones. What am I using? It was between a choice of Sikaflex 291 and CT1. CT1 I've been reading about for a long time. Lots of people love this stuff. I've done some work with Sikaflex previously, and it's been alright. I did the hatch and it was alright. About 4 years ago, I did some work on the keel joint and it fell off. Perhaps I didn't prepare it properly, but this stuff has got a much longer shelf life, so I will be keeping some of this on the boat when I start to voyage. It works underwater, it works with salt water, its characteristics are exactly as good as Sikaflex, so that is what I'm going to be using. I'm sure everything else would work as well, but let me know what your favourite is and why. What I should be doing is running some Sikaflex around here, and then on the top part of the thread, this is based on what the manufacturers say, I'm actually going to be using PTFE tape just for the tiny little bit at the top. That's just for waterproofness. The sealant is actually going to provide adhesion as well. I am going to hold this still, or Lucy's going to hold this still and screw this in. Which is again what the manufacturers say you should do. I feel very squeamy about turning this and sort of churning up the stuff that you're relying on to keep it waterproof. I'm sure it wouldn't make any difference, but I prefer to hold this still, and once I have screwed it in, I'm going to let it set. I'm not going to give it an extra turn. That to me seems just wrong. That once you've got, and there will be a little bit around here on the inside, once you've got it dried, why would you then want to break that seal? This stuff remains flexible more or less for life. But do comment, because I know there are very genuine held feelings either way. This is not going to be attached as such to the plate. That wooden plate is really just to keep it flat, but I am going to put the screws in really to make sure there isn't too much of a twisting movement as I'm opening the Seacock. You don't have to put this in, this is not compulsory, and this is a very different type of Seacock to the Seacocks where you actually you can have the plate, you can bolt through and underneath, and they are designed differently. For this design, this is the way I'm going to do it. So anyway, comment, get outrageous, say whatever you want, disagree, agree, and let's go and fit it. I forgot to say in the last bit, by the way, it is very important that you use whatever solvent is recommended for the particular sealant that you're using, because I think when I used the Sikaflex before, Sikaflex is quite sensitive to putting the right primer on, so I'm using the CT1 made mod, so I've cleaned everything up. We've written the line. So, you don't get an awful lot of working time with this stuff. I think it's 8 minutes before it goes skin hard. So I am going to put the PTFE tape on first. This is great stuff. You don't need a huge amount, and you should do it in the opposite direction to the thread. My daughter's been playing with this like a toy gun. No wonder I don't allow her to do things which are critical. Oh, is this on? It is on. I can't see those. Right. Here we go. Point of no return, or the point of let's do it all again. Lovely stuff. Can you see that? Probably not, hang on. This has got quite a nice viscosity to it. I'm not going to put too little on. I really am not. I'm going to do it up the threads a little bit. That is nice and gooey.
Straight on, or do I need to clean it?
No, you can put it straight on. So there you go. I think that comes under the that comes under adequate. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little bit more on the inside. Just going to pop a little bit more on the inside. Okay, you ready? Because I'm going to start turning it now. Say that as a yes. There, that's perfect. Last little bit was difficult because I didn't want to drop the camera. Right, Lucy is boasting because she managed to keep the line exactly where it was supposed to be.
I hope if you include this in your video, you do like a sped up version of this cleaning.
I think I'm going to do a sped up version of this cleaning.
Not that I'm telling you how to do your channel or anything like that. Wouldn't dream of that. Not too shabby.
There we are, that'll do.
That'll do, you think?
That's fine. Super duper duper. Right, I'm going to put another bead on the inside around the other bit. I'll show that and then we're finished and I shall post this video. Happy with that? Yeah, happy with that. Well done, Lucy, thank you.
Alright, what would you do without me?
Oh,
Sink.
how long have we got? What a life I could have led without children.
Rude.
Should we do a whole video on that? And probably don't need to do this, but just for completeness, I'm going to put a very small bead. Just around this edge. And so there we go. I won't video it, but I'm going to let that dry off completely, and then I'm going to put the two screws in, as I mentioned before. Well, that was a very long video, wasn't it? But I thought I'd cover it in detail because if you are interested in doing this sort of work, it's nice to see what other people do. As I say, do leave comments below. Might get onto something else next time and then finish off the holding tank at a later date.